Okay, let's go. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Alexis.
Thank you
for accepting this invitation to give one of the 3 keynotes in the 4th History of Games 2022 conference. This is organized by Carl Terrien and I. It's part of a much bigger consortium. It's the 4th edition. The first one was in 2013, then 2018. 2020 was already online, and this time it's online once again. There are 3 keynotes. Yours is the first happening today. Then next Monday, we will have Véronique Dazen, and the Friday after, we will have Wendy Sierra. The conference is composed of these 3 keynotes, but also 12 workshops, which are closed. Only people who are registered to the conference can go to one of them. The objective, the goal, was to have safe discussions among us, especially including young scholars who will want to share some ideas from their current PhD works and be able to share it with other people from the community, including more senior scholars. There will be a general meeting on the last Friday next week, where people can join the organization of this conference, and also a special panel on East Asian studies. So yeah, Carl is not with us today, but he is present in most of the workshops. He'll be present at the 2 other keynotes. We've been sharing the work because this conference is taking place on 3 different weeks and on so many different time zones. Some of the workshops are happening at 2:30 in the morning in my own time zone. So we are not always present, both of us. So I think I will give the floor to Alexis, but before that, we are very happy that Alexis accepted our invitation. I've known him for a few years. I met him in a video game festival in France, the Stunfest. It's a fighting game competition festival where you can also see people giving music concerts with Game Boys. So these were great times and the best way to meet him. He presented, in fact, Carl to me. So as you see, it's we are good friends, a very close community. And Alexis has been writing with Guillaume Montagnon a huge body of work on the history of video games in France. It's been published only in French, so we are very happy in the context of this conference to make his work known to everybody in the world. And so we are very happy that Alexis accepted to present his work in English. I think it's the first time it's happening. So the world will discover what's happening what happened, in fact, in France in the last century. Yeah, so the floor is yours, Alexis. Thank you very much for accepting this invitation.
Thank you, Yannick. Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to welcome you in my office, in my personal office. I'm at home, so my son is just watching TV. Or not that's not the time. So he's doing drawings or less. Maybe I will make a hello in a few minutes because there is my neighbor Robert who is passing. So it's very interesting to be here. It's reminds me the time we were doing a class by Zoom or by Google Meet a few months ago. Well, so thanks to Carl and Yannick for the opportunity to present this book and this historical research on video game in France. The project was initially entitled French Touche, an history of video game in France. French Touche is a pun on French and French touch, this kind of label you can use to characterize architecture, electronic music, arts, and touche, because in French, touche is the key from the keyboards. Touche is the key from the keyboard, but also the button from a joypad. So this pen, French touche, is maybe the first title we give to this project. Now it's a book, but I have to take back this title for this keynote. The final book is entitled Une histoire du jeu vidéo en France, so a video game history in France, des labos aux chambres d'ados, from labs to teens room. It's an historical research which explore all video games appeared in France, showing how they came with their specificities, mode of creation, and creating economic models, but also a media environment and legal, non-technical frameworks. So I'm going to use OBS, as Yannick is telling in the chat, and so I will you will see me in the little stamp image to make this presentation. You have on the left the cover, the final cover of the book, and just on the right the project of the first book when the book was French Touche. So I'm going to present myself because maybe people don't know who I am and what I did. Firstly, I wrote in the 2000s, almost 18 years ago, a PhD dissertation on video games adapted from movies. It was something about video and cinema relation. I was in film studies department. So I made my PhD supervised by a specialist of genre and gender, Raphaël Moine, and I wrote my PhD under film studies, media studies, also economics and cultural history, and a little bit of theory of fiction. My PhD was thinking of the situation when, I don't know, Anakin Skywalker is killed by Obi-Wan in a video game. So what do you do with that when you know that Anakin is becoming Darth Vader? So 3 books there are here, les jeux vidéo, the Pixels in Hollywood. That was the historical part of the PhD. And I wrote another book, Les jeux vidéo au cinéma, about video games in movies this time. This is not from my PhD. And last, Jeux vidéo cinéma. It's a collective book, and Carl Terrien, Bernard Perron, and other colleagues from France and other countries wrote a little bit and papers inside this book. So maybe I've got my 15 minutes of celebrity in the early 2010s because I share some data, and I share some data on movies turned into video games, on 500 movies into video games. That was on my blog at the time, and I have the great luck to have that Henry Jenkins, the transmedia pope, notice this post and make a post on his blog on my datas. And after that, Gamma Sutra or Kotaku made a little papers on this data. Christian Nutt said that it was breaking the statistics of video game film adaptations. And Kirk Hamilton in Kotaku wrote it was a little bit wonky, but he liked this kind of deep analysis. So I work also on video game as cultural industry. That's for my class at Sorbonne Nouvelle. I am a professor or maître de conférences, in fact, in French. And the last years, with the book on history of video game, I also work with a colleague, European colleague, and with a Canadian colleague also on video game press. First for a project entitled Ludo Press. The book is incoming next month in November at Presse Universitaire de Liège. And also a project with Ludov, but also Yauko Surminen, Henry Lowood, Graham Kirkpatrick, on game criticisms that the colleagues from Université de Montréal used to organize. So that's the work I do on video games. So the question now is why I wrote this book with Guillaume Montagnon. I will present Guillaume on the next slide. Why I wrote this book on video game in France, on history of video game in France. So in 2010, I've been on the Encyclopedia of Video Game project, edited by Mark G.P. Wolves. And so at the beginning, I have a first and try on cutscene and séquence cinématique in French. So I wrote this. In fact, Carl made the link between Mark and I to wrote this and try on cutscene. And when the project was almost done, Mark wrote me back, wrote me an email and told me that there was entries by country, and some countries have been selected for the encyclopedia. So he told me that there is nobody to write on France and that I'm the only French people on this project. So Mark gave me a few weeks to gather information on video game in France, and I make 500 words and try to present very quickly what was history of video game in French. That was very interesting because at the end of this little paper, there was lot of blind spots on video game history in France. We know few things in finally, and the majority of data of information was on the 80s and 90s, with a lot of things about computer games in France in the 80s and the 90s. So this lack of knowledge in the early 1910s told me that there was something to do on this subject. Mark come back after the encyclopedia and say, well, you know, this is very good, this subject of country. So go back for a book on this subject. And this time you have an essay to write on France. And the book is Video Games Around the World. And so I have the possibility to exploit the first result of the work on video game in France is in this essay in 2015. Beware, I'm not an historian, nobody's perfect. So I'm coming from media studies and film studies in a part, and I'm also in communication science in France, sciences de l'information et de la communication. And so in this way, I am very near from people working on media history. So in fact, I wasn't at first time an historian. No. People after some papers and books, they tell that Blanchet is maybe an historian, but I have to do this work. From Mark to the project, there was the three guys at the bottom of my slide. Marc Petroni, Luc Petroni on the right, and Benjamin Perret on the left. At the time, there was also Sébastien Mirk and Florent Gorge. They create a publisher specialized in video game in France. The name is Pix'n Love, and Pix'n Love was the publisher of my first book, Des Pixels à Hollywood. So in 2012, they told me, well, come in at the office of Pix'n Love, and we want to talk with you on a project. So I went, and they told me, well, Des Pixels à Hollywood is a good result. It's a research book, but people seems to appreciate it, and so we would like to launch a new project on the history of French video games. That was the first proposal, French video game. And so maybe they think about, I don't know, Another World, Eric Chahi, Frédéric Rénal, Alone in the Dark, and all this kind of very famous video game in France and around the world. And so I told them that that's perfect. I just wrote for Mark something, so I am in the subject, and why not? We can do that. But that was the beginning of my position in the Sorbonne Nouvelle, so a lot of work, a lot of administration too. And so they tell me, well, we have a young guy named Guillaume. That's the player 2, and Guillaume is on the up left of my slide. And Guillaume was working at the time on a arcade room in Lyon-Pardieu, and so he gathered some documents about that, and he tried to write some kind of miscellaneous books for Pix'n Love. So Pix'n Love make the meeting with Guillaume, and so we talk about the project, and we decide to do it together. During the project, on the left, maybe you recognized Sébastien Janvaux from Université de Lorraine. Sébastien wrote with us the final chapter of the book, dealing with French adventure games. And so that's the way we are making this book. Surely, the rising of local video games histories since the early 2010s was very important to do this job. We read what Melanie Swalwell, what Jaroslav Zvelch would write in the 2010s about the history of their own country about video game. And so for sure we are in this kind of approach of the object. So the question was what sources and how to write this history, because the writing is important in video game. Maybe that's the possibility for me to present some what have been written on video game history in France when we are beginning to write on our book Histoire des jeux vidéo en France. I think a lot of you are not very familiar with the French book on history of video games, so it will be a little bit of name dropping, but it's important to show what we have. There was surely a lack of historical research in video game in France. Few books, and a majority of them, all of them, in fact, was written by journalists or by fans, by amateurs of video game. And so the monographic approaches by these fans, by these amateurs, was a major way to write this history. So on websites, for example, for some book, for some MOOC, for example, because in Pix'n Love used to publish this kind of MOOC. I will just show you. I have in my magnificent deal. Well, I have this one. Okay, so you are, some of book are here. I'm just going to up in my sorry, I may load my cam up here. And so, so you have this kind of MOOC. This is Alone in the Dark, and so wrote by people who, for part of them, become journalists for the specialized press in France. So we know that with diaporama, with fan and monographic approach, there is two major risks. The memory, I mean, the risk of falling into nostalgia, the author, other events in the game, the brands, and sometimes the social historical context, which is specific, is on the left and not very central to the work of writing history. Secondly, journalistic works, I mean, like Daniel Ishbia, is too often in the way of storytelling. It's not such rigorous work. Sometimes history is a bit dull, but it's important in historical research to have rigor. So in journalistic works, there are storytelling, romanticizing history, people, creating adventure and all that. And there is also some narrative, the rise and fall, for example, great successes, great failures. So that sometimes it's important to be not in this way to write history of video game. So, for example, Daniel Ishbia wrote one of the first book on video game in France. The title is Bâtisseur de rêves for the first edition. And Pix'n Love used to publish this book. This is the new version, La Saga des Jeux Vidéo by Daniel Ishbia. But the problem with this kind of approach has been well underlined by one of my fantastic colleague, Marion Coville. Sorry, I hide Marion names here. So Marion Coville from Université de Poitiers. She wrote a paper a few weeks ago in 2014, and the title is Créateur de jeux vidéo et récit de vie, la formation d'une figure hégémonique. It's a book about a paper about a representation of the video game designers as male, as conqueror, as genius. She's reading Ishbia's book, and she's writing in Ishbia's way to write history and to write the life of the game designer. The genius and the divine gift are articulated with a practice of intensive creation, even obsessional. And further, we can read this apparent powerlessness of male creators in front of their destiny contribute to build the image of a gift disconnected from the social or economic issues. The living of environment and the cost of access to technologies are erased in favor of the representation of a young man touched by grace who realizes his destiny by using a professional computer equipment. So this kind of reading of these sources is very important for us, and we try to not going in this journalistic way of storytelling. I like the work of Florent Gorge. He is one of our specialists. One of specialists of Nintendo in France and in the world. And in Florent's book, there is at the beginning this fascination for a great man of history of video game, and book after book, he writes the complexity of creation in video game, the complexity of creation of platform. For example, the last book is on the Game Boy, and so he showed that it's a collective project. About French video game, there is the work by Eric Cubizol, writing for the Pix'n Love MOOC also, and Eric is making monographical papers on people or games, but there are a lot of information very important, and we use it for the books. And last, during the 2010s, the press, the paper press, specialized in video game, used to write a lot about history of video game in JV, jeuxvideo.com, or in Pixel, Le Monde, the daily paper Le Monde. You have very often paper on history of video game around the world, and in France also. In the 2010s, there also, and I finish with that, some scholars who wrote on video game, but in a more academical way. The first of them is maybe Anthony de Oliveira. He used to write a master dissertation in 2008 dealing with French video games, computers in the 80s or in the 90s. And that was a master dissertation. He used to begin a PhD thesis, but it did not finish it. Colin Cidre did a wonderful job on video game distribution in France. It was a PhD dissertation in École des Chartes. École des Chartes is a school in La Sorbonne to learn the work of archive. And so his PhD is on the distribution of video game in France. Julien Lalu, on the right, wrote on political discourse on video game in France. He used to work on the debates in parliaments, in French parliaments, on video games from the late 70s to the early 2010s. And last but not least, Boris Krivicki. Boris Krivicki is from Belgium, and he wrote about the press. You have this book. I will show you this book just here. Wrote with Yves Brehme on the press start, on the press in French and in France. So Boris is working for Université Liège. So we have the beginning of historical research by historian. Julien is an historian, and Colin is working in archives. So maybe the lack of legitimacy of video game is going, and now we can work on this subject. You know, in France, that history is a classical field, so the people have some habits, and so you don't work on video game. It's too recent in a certain way. It's a popular object, so it's not enough noble to be to have a consideration from history. But the generation of researchers are changing, and so the way to approach video game is changing also. Maybe one of the problem of the history is also that there is no much sources on video game. A lot of things disappears or have disappeared for the many years, and so it's difficult sometimes to make this kind of history. So on our methodology, we're trying to produce data on video game in France, and we're trying to make something very clear. We use chronological writing from the 1960 to 1991, and the goal was to write the first overview of on what happens on the national territory on France. The job was to find a new primary and secondary sources. We work at the National Library, BNF, but also Guillaume went to the city of Caen to work at IMEC, who give the archives of entreprise, business institution and all that. We went to Dijon, known for the mustard, but also for a cinémathèque universitaire at the University of Dijon. We use a professional press at the BNF. You can consult press of professional press on electronic and amusement, what we call automatique in France, computers or toys, the specialized press and video game, but also the mainstream press with the daily paper like Le Monde or a weekly paper like Le Nouvel Observateur. And we do around 60 interviews for the book. We choose not to have interviews with the stars. I mean, there is just one interview with Frédéric Reynal, for example, but we didn't have interviews with people like, I don't know, Michel Ancel or other people well known of the video game creation, for example. But we try to find, I mean, the people, workers, anonymous, people who work in factories or who work for distributors at the time of amusement machine and all that. So that give a very popular test of on the book, and sometimes these people never talk about their work in the video game industry or in amusement industry, and so that's the possibility to have new testimonies on the video game in France. There is this question about national history. We choose to take the citation of Achille Mbembe in introduction of the book. I read it. National history means nothing. There is only history in the circulation of words, in the relationship with the other, and is the other, the distant, who grants me my identity. A society that refuses to be given its identity by the other is a profoundly sick society, agitated by all sorts of trouble. I'm sorry if my translation is a little bit wonky, but we like what this philosopher from Cameroon, he studied in Paris, he teaching in Columbia University and now in University of Johannesburg, I think. But you know that we are living quite difficult times in France and in other countries, and the nationalism is very strong, and so we have one fear that it's the people were looking for a book about some kind of national genius to celebrate French quality of French success in video game. That's not the goal, and as the title was French Touche, French Touch, that was a label used to design a French game designer in the 90s, and so it's a label given by, for example, by British press, for instance. So we are very careful on this question, and when the book was launched, there was the first people who want a copy of the book was people from a nationalist journal, nationalist paper. So that was the way. It's not the way to celebrate French genius, or no. It's the book to say what happens in France about a video game. So I have to drink a little bit, and maybe I will take 10 minutes or 50 minutes, Yannick, if you're okay to finish my presentation. And I just want to see you. we make a little trailer to launch the book. So I thanks my friend Florent Péridon who made this trailer. I propose to show it to you, and after that I come back on two case of studies. One about what's going on video game experiments before Pong in France. And after that, what's about Pongs in France in the 70s. So here is my trailer. Maybe there is a little delay with the sound.
We don't have the sound, Alexis.
Ah, sorry. Ah, mince, il n'y a pas le son. Bon, sorry. There was the sound when we make
in the
test?
second half. We had the sound in the second half.
Ah, okay. Sorry. So that's the problem with my system. That there is this delay. Okay, I'm back, and so I'm going to the end of my presentation. So the slides are here, and I'm going to put back my face. I forgot to put it back. Okay, so we try to explore sources to find first video game experiments in France. We know with the America-centered historiography that we have to look after what's going in research center in computer science, in research laboratories, because there is a computer during the 50s and the 60s, and maybe in the consumer or military electronics, I mean research and development. So we try to find something, and for example, we wrote at National Institute of Computing, which is an old institute in France, to ask, okay, we are going to make a history of video game in France. Do you have ideas or something done on a video game? And so we have no response, no answer. Nobody wrote us back to say, well, we do something. So we have to go on sources, and the best sources was the National Institute of Television, INA, in France, and INA got archives, and we go in the archives of INA, searching not for jeux vidéo, the name of video game in French, the translation of video game in French, but we search around electronic, computer, cybernetic, intelligence artificielle, IA, and so we find some report at the TV about computer and using a video game. For example, we find the first guy of video game in France after an archive. I will show you this archive now. The name is Paul Braffort, and this is an archive from 71, broadcast on French TV in the early 70s. And maybe there is a delay with the sound.
I can confirm that there is no sound yet.
Ce coup est illégal, meilleur jouet. Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? Vous avez triché, en fait?
Non, j'ai pas triché, seulement au lieu de donner à la machine les valeurs numériques qui correspondent à cette position-là, qui elle est tout à fait légale, je lui ai donné celles correspondant à cette position-là, coup que je n'ai évidemment pas le droit de jouer puisque je ne dois pas poser mon L sur le L de la machine.
Et ça, la machine s'en est aperçue tout de
Bien
suite.
sûr.
Mais qu'est-ce que ça veut dire, en fait? La machine s'est rendue compte, ça veut dire que quoi? Qu'il y a deux systèmes comparables, un homme et une machine qui jouent l'un contre l'autre? Il y a deux...
Okay, I stop here with Paul Brafort. So this archive is from the early 70s, but the work of Paul Brafort is from the early 60s. And in fact, Paul Brafort, with whom we can make an interview. I meet Paul Brafort in 2014, and we have a one other interview. He was quite old at the time, 91 or 92 years old. And Paul Brafort wrote a Gobang program or Gomaku program in the early 60s on a IBM computer in Euratom. Euratom is a European institution on a nuclear application. So Mr. Brafort was a mathematician at first, and after the war, he had some friends in the communist circles in France, and so these people were often physicists or mathematicians or engineers, and so he can go to Euratom, and at the time he was working on the library at Euratom. And so he make research on what we call probability trees. And working on probability trees, first he discovered the cybernetic, and so he read about that, and he chose a game as a support for an experimentation. The point was to find a mechanical or electronical system that could go from people speaking a language in Europe in the 60s. You have a documentation in Euratom in French, in English, in German, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, and so there is many language because all is translated into this major European language. And so the goal of Brafort is, well, somebody is speaking Italian, you have to go directly to the documents in Italian. So at the beginning, he thinks to work on chess. And after that, he wrote a Gobang program. Gobang is a game known also in France in the name Puissance 4. I don't know the name in English, but you have to make a line of 4 colored dots to win again against another player. So that was the first date, and the latest date we find to make the beginning of the video game. Brafort don't work alone. He worked with somebody whose the name was Paul Lussan, and so they make this first game in 1960. We have a paper in a colloquium in Berlin that mentioned this game in 61, and Paul Brafort remembers very well. He was very old when we have an interview with him, but he was very young in his head, and so the memory was very good, and so he remembered what he did about this Gobang game in the early 60s. It's quite funny because Brafort is not only a scientific, he's also a poet, he's also a singer, and he was part of a very important collective in poetry and literature, which is the Oulipo, Ouvroir de littérature potentielle. He was a friend of Raymond Queneau, of Georges Perec, of François Le Lyonnais, and he used to practice this test for games and letters that was very strong at Oulipo. He also have an activity of a poet, of a lyricist and composer. He used to write songs for Barbara, for example, or for Juliette Gréco. And he used to sing also. I've got this poster on the left of my slide. You see Paul Brafort with Jacques Brel, the Belgian singer, and Mouloudji, which is a French singer. And so he used to sing in a little cabaret in Paris, which is Les Trois Baudets. So he got this activity. I made a presentation in France maybe 6 years ago, with the first result about Paul Brafort. It was at Media Studies History Colloquium. And when I present this result on Paul Brafort, at the end of the keynote, the people come and say, well, it's amazing. We know Paul Brafort in the literature and how literature work with computer in France in the early 80s. But we didn't know that he have done 20 years before this work on video game. He's quite known, for example, to create what he calls the Alamo, atelier de littérature assisté par la mathématique et les ordinateurs, which was a group of poets and writers who wants to use the computer to help to write some texts or poems or things like that. So it's the possibility to say that first, we found with Guillaume maybe around 8 or 10 examples of video game before Pong in France. So this is not a game maybe as important as the Space War for the MIT in '62 in the America century, the history of video game, but there is an activity of creation of prototypes, for example, of or a video game. The French television, the French television give some example of, for example, Roger Louis and on the down of my slide. Roger Louis is a journalist and is playing in this archive a Marion Bad game with a computer system which is Antinea. It is in January 1963, and Antinea is the computer from CNET, Centre National d'Études des Télécommunications, National Center of Telecom, and so he's playing Marion Bad. So he's not playing, in fact, he's losing against the computer at Marion Bad, because at the Marion Bad game, you know, you have the matches, the fire matches, and you have to take 1, 2, or 3 matches, and the player who have the last one lose the game. And so as the Marion Bad is a very simple case to make the computer winning at all condition the game, Roger Louis is losing, and is quite furious, in fact, in front of the camera. Oh, it's because he make the first play of the game, and the young lady at the back of the screen is telling, well, Antinia told me that you've lost, and but you can continue the party if you want. And so Roger Louis said, oh, it's not very fair, but the demonstration is amazing. The computer wins against the human minds. Sorry, I just see that my slide is in French. So last things. It's a way we find some object before Pong. We know that in the 1960 there was a PDP-8 in a laboratory in Grenoble, in the French Alps. The name of the laboratory is IMAG, Informatique et Mathématiques Appliquées de Grenoble. And the fact that there is this PDP-8 for us was maybe the hypothesis that there was a space war on this PDP-8. You know that before that, David Monens showed that the distribution of space wars was quite limited in the 60s. There was this idea that each PDP from a deck used to work with space war, and that there was a space war in each PDP. So we have this hypothesis, and so we write to old PhD students from the 60s, from the IMAG, IMAG is working on computer graphics research, and we found Michel Lucas, and we write to Michel Lucas. The luck we have is that these peoples they were working in computer in the 60s, and now they have 70, 80 years old. They are 70 or 80 years old, but they check their email twice a day or every 2 hours. So it's very quick to make an exchange with them. And we asked Michel Lucas, did you play a Space War on the PDP-8 that there was in the HIMAG in 66? And he told us, oh, no, we didn't play the video game. We haven't the time to play on this kind of computer. It was very expensive, and people was trying to have an access to the computer. And so we make a second mail. Well, here is a snapshot of a screen of Space War. Are you sure, Mr. Lucas, that you don't play that? I'm sure, Mr. Blanchet. I didn't never play this game. But Mr. Lucas, maybe you play game, or no, Mr. Blanchet, we haven't time. It wasn't possible. It was very hard to have the access as this machine. And in the last mail, he told me, but well, if you want, we have something. And after this, we have something. We know that we have something for the video game history in France. The something was a game. Think about the use of optical pen on PDP-8, and so the game has no name, no title, but you have some stars appearing on the screen, and with the pen you have to check the stars, and at the end you have a score. You miss how many stars, and you check how many stars. And so it's some kind of speed, because you have to be speed on the screen, but it's also a reflex. And what is funny, it's a very kind of a game that you can find at the how do you say these fields with a lot of game and of that. I have not the word. Michel Lucas told me we used to present this game when somebody important comes in the laboratory, but at the time we have to stop to use it because the people they are going to break the screen because they pick the screen with the optical pane. And after exchanging about this first application, there is another application. The name is Auto, and Auto is a possibility to experiment a new language they create in HIMAG. The name is Lagrol, langage graphique d'Olivier Lecarme. Olivier Lecarme is another PhD student at the time, and Olivier Lecarme told us that there was a figurative element on the screen in 1966, and a figurative element was a car, just a car. Auto is for automobile, a car. It told us it was drawn like a kid, but with the A and the R keys on the keyboard, you can make it moving on the left or on the right. A for accelerate, R for ralentir, decelerate, and so you can move this object, this graphic object on the screen in 1966 in France. So we find a momentum quite interesting. The link between the lab and the entrepreneur, between the lab and the company, or the possibly a patent to make a patent on this video game. It is we are in Toulouse in the early 70s, and there is a school who make diplomas for engineers, École nationale supérieure d'électrotechnique, d'électronique. It's called ENSATE, and there is a lab about TV and TV signal. It's Jean Bajon, who is the boss of this lab. And we know that some young engineer students made a project on the right of my slide, a simulation and visualization of a ping pong game on a TV screen. And so we don't know if they imagine that. It is 1973-74. So it's also the time when Pong come in France. So we don't know if Jean Bajon see a Pong in a bar in France and tell his engineer, find a solution to make the same thing, or if he have the idea to make this kind of exchange. Jean Bajon dies 12 years ago, so we haven't the time and the possibility to have an exchange with him. They make a ping pong simulation. They make a pool simulation. You have it on the screenshot on the left of my slide, with a screen put like that, and you have a stick, pool stick to shock the ball. And they also made a driving simulation a little bit later in 76. So we have some images here on my slide, where you can see the ping pong, Jean Bajon on the left, the ping pong prototype, and in the center the pool prototype. We know that this school of engineers were in relation with an entrepreneur, French entrepreneur from Société Occitane d'Électronique, and this entrepreneur used to put a patent to make the business with this creation. So I'm going to finish now with a simple question. It's about when Pong did reach French territory. And so we work on professional press for this question. It's a quite simple question, but it was important to have some data, a year, maybe a month, when we can say there is a Pong in France. So what we went to the National Library, and we asked for all the professional paper on amusement industry. In France is secteur de l'automatique de divertissement français, and so from 1969 to 1965. We see all the copies to see if there is something which is a video game. And at the end, in summer 1973, we found this advertising. It's on the left on my side, and you can see the TV ping pong. It's a American copy of Atari's Pong by Chicago Coins, an amusement company. Chicago Coin is working with a French distributor, which is Busso's, a very old French distributor of amusement machine. And so we have this presence, this object in front of air hockey. So it's very funny because it's the same game, but analogical way on the left, and electronic way on the right. What is important, that it's a non-event. Nobody cares about this new machine. It's not a revolution, or no comments by the professional. They don't care. They don't care because, especially in amusement business, we know that the novelty is very important, and each machine is more new than the other. Exploring source, so we work on this kind of press, and it's very important because we have a lot of advertising, and this advertising make the possibility to have date, have not date, sorry, have the possibility to say what years, what months we have the this kind of machine, the American constructors makers and the Japanese makers and all that. There is no screenshot about the game in this spreads. It's a very commercial approach, and it's defending the professional interest. There is a lot of paper on taxes, laws, and all that. They use the word furniture, meuble, to design the pinballs, the jukebox, and the video game. And there is a lot of reports about local entrepreneurs, because that's the people who buy advertising in this kind of press. So the economic model is on advertising, by the professional. So, what is the first occurrence of the syntagma, the word jeu vidéo, the direct translation of video game? There is a variety of terms in this press. We call them first tennis, because all the video game are copies of Pong. So, un tennis vidéo, ou un vidéo, le vidéo is the way we design this new kind of furniture. And after that, we have the two translation, vidéo jeu or jeu vidéo. I like very much in French the expression jeu diversifié électronique, so diversified electronic games, or diversified furniture. And the name arcade is not used in the 70s in this press. Arcade is Italian and French word. Arcade is Arcadia, and Arcadia is the way the arrow is coming from the arc, and so it makes this kind of movement. And we know that it was used by British and American people in the late 19th century. But arcade is not used by this press, except when an American people is interviewed in this press, and they use the word arcade. Something very interesting is that they're using a definite article, the with the title of the games, Le Breakout, Le Space Invaders, Le Galaxian. And so this le is maybe that they have this kind of very concrete approach of the game. The game is not a software. It's not une œuvre. It's furniture to be exploited in the cafe or in the bar and all that. Last, there is this expression, le casse-brique. Casse-brique is maybe the first way to present a video game genre in French. Casse-brique is brick breaker as a translation, and it's the way to present copies of Breakout, of Atari's Breakout. Atari's Breakout and Le Casse-brique, and Breakout is maybe the game in France that make the video game popular. All the people we make interviews say Pong, it was quite a success. Pong, le ping-pong, ou le tennis was quite a success, but what was the major success was le casse-brique, Breakout. And so they use this expression casse-brique to hide that, in fact, they are making counterfeiting. And this phenomenon of counterfeiting is very, very important in France. There is no video game practices in the 70s in France without counterfeiting. French factory are making this kind of games, this kind of copies after American success and after Japanese success in the late 70s, and this is in a industrial way. Okay, we found and I will finish on that. We found a place in the Doubs manufacturing video games in France. This is the what we call l'usine Kicker, Electro-Kicker ou Jupiter factory. It was a business deal between Atari and between Socodimex, which is a French not factory, but entreprise of video game. And so they make an important production. Guillaume make a little this is the building of now what was this factory in France near Switzerland and Germany, and so he made the journey to see what it's on, and we make an interview with one of the workers working in this factory. It was closed in 1982 and relocated in Ireland because the cost of work was less important in Ireland. So the guy we made the interview told us that they come in the factory and they say, well, we fired everybody and now we are going to make our furniture and video games in Ireland. Okay, so I'm finishing. I was a little longer than I expect. If you want to read in English and not to have this horrible accent I have, maybe you can go to the Encyclopedia of Video Game by Mark J.P. Wolf. I made updated entry in France. There is also the Video Games Around the World by Mark Wolf, and there is this wonderful little book. It was published, edited by Victor Navarro Remesal et Oliver Pérez Latorre, perspective on the European video games, and I wrote a paper on the counterculture in video game history in France and in the computer game. So we can keep in touch if you want. Here is my email address at Sorbonne Nouvelle. I'm on Twitter, but maybe for no more time after what we know, and so I'm going on Mastodon, Alexis Blanchet at mammoth.fr, and sometime I'm going on Twitch to present a video game and to deal with video games. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope it wasn't too long, and maybe we have 20 minutes to exchange on the subject.